Greetings from LA, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. And today, if you don't mind, I would very much like to share with you my thoughts and comments with respect to a recent announcement made by the great team over at the Criterion Collection. I'm making this video, it's Sunday, January 19th, 2025. A few days ago, last week, mid to late last week, in fact, the Criterion Collection made its announcement on its website with respect to the planned releases, the releases that it plans to make for April 2025. So it's about 3 months from now. So you can see the titles and all the technical specifications, planned cover artwork designs, special features list up, write-ups on the films, etc. You can find all that information and more on the Criterion Collection website, criterion.com. So if you're interested on the specifics of those points, I strongly encourage you, my dear friends, to check out the Criterion Collection website for more info. But if it's okay with you, I'd like to share with you my thoughts and comments initially with regard to this recent announcement for the planned April releases. Again, my thoughts and comments might change, and again, this is just a very initial impression. I don't have the items in front of me, but again, just based off of what I'm seeing on the website and other maybe peripheral yet relevant information. But if it's okay with you, my dear friends, let us, you and I, share together our initial thoughts and comments and reactions with respect to the planned releases for April 2025 from the Criterion Collection. Okay, so first up, scheduled for release on, let's see here, scheduled for release on April 1st, 2025, according to the Criterion Collection website. And this is a title which is already designated by Criterion at spine number 309, meaning it's a title that already exists in the Criterion Collection physical media catalog, for instance, on a Blu-ray. But it looks like in April, Criterion will be employing the 4K UHD physical media format to provide a 4K plus Blu-ray combo edition release of this work, which is described as being from the year 1953. And the name of the filmmaker is Kenji Mizoguchi. And the name of the work is, it's referred to in English as UGETSU. It's a Japanese film. The Japanese title is UGETSU Monogatari, but UGETSU is re-emerging in the Criterion Collection physical media catalog. Again, it already exists in Criterion's physical media catalog, for instance, on a Blu-ray, which is what I have in front of me here. And this Blu-ray is in fact purported to be based on what was at the time of this release, which was circa, I want to say 2017, yes. This was purported to be based on, at the time, referred to as a new 4K digital restoration. I'm looking at the Criterion website for the upcoming 4K UHD release in April, and it indicates 4K restoration, so I'm not sure if it seems to suggest to me that maybe we're talking about the same restoration basis for this upcoming release in April that we've already had in the previous Blu-ray. But again, we shall find out. We shall see. I don't know these details again without checking out the actual release when it comes in April. But we'll see about that. In any event, you know, if even if that's the case, this is it's a really quite startling and striking presentation of the film. So I'm looking forward to re-engaging with it again, taking into consideration any sorts of maybe differences in the hard technology that's being used, or the and the like. Although, you know, even to my own ever failing eyes and ears as I'm getting older, it was already difficult for me to keep track of the very minute differences that occur, yet still very significant. But at the same time, you know, I'll do my very best in trying to do a compare and contrast between, say, the 4K disc and then the Blu-ray disc. Although it seems like my intuition is telling me that maybe we're talking about the same restoration basis, but we shall see. We shall see. So with that being said, this is Ugetsu Monogatari, or Ugetsu. The Mizoguchi film Ugetsu is one of the most beautiful and profound and haunting films I have ever seen. It is, let me say that again, it is one of the most beautiful and profound and haunting films that I have ever seen. It is, in some parts, a kind of uh, a folklore type of film. It's some parts also a one might call a sort of historical epic. It's also a it also touches upon aspects of the context in which it was made, the immediate post-war era of Japan in the 20th century. It also reveals many aspects of, say, what one might call, um, say, aspects of maybe changing tides of politics and culture, gender roles and relationships, as well as economic roles and relationships. That's class, which also has a sort of universal aspect to it, as well as having a very specific historical contextual aspect to it, thus giving rise to this film being, say, a historical film on the one hand, but also very contemporary feeling film on the other. It has a very a rich cross current in that way. It's also a love story. It's also a ghost story. It's a horror film in many aspects. It is also very much one of the most, photographically speaking, it is one of the most beautiful and rich and ambitious and quite delicate and haunting and tragic films that I have ever seen. Um, Mizoguchi is a filmmaker that again, one of my great failings. I have many failings as a person and also as a YouTuber. But one of such failings, I would say, is my lack of attention given, say, on this YouTube channel to the works of Mizoguchi. I can't claim to be in any way, shape, or form an expert when it comes to the works of Mizoguchi, but I have seen a number of his works many, many times. Ugetsu being perhaps the Mizoguchi film I've seen maybe the most in my life. I can say every time I've seen it, it. I know what's coming. I know the trajectory of the story. I know this because I've seen it many times, but I'm always caught off guard. I'm always just maybe jolted from my seat, in a manner of speaking, because just of how impactful it is. And I think it has a one might call an ethereal beauty, although I would say too it's very concrete in a lot of ways, in a sort of corporeal fashion. But it's also very, it has lyrical beats to it. It also has a sense of a rugged sensibility about human nature that has a sort of practical aspect to it, as well as being very lyrical and poetic, which I think is a really profound combination indeed. So this is a yeah this is a really great film. It could be perhaps one of my favorite, if not my absolute favorite, of the works of Mizoguchi. And as I say, I know what's coming. I know the story, and I know the way it will turn, or the turns that it will make. But I'm still caught off guard every time, and I think that's just showing, at least to me, in terms of my own subjective viewing, of how powerful and how skillful and how majestic this film is. So it already exists in the Criterion Collection physical media catalog, as I say, in a great release, Blu-ray release, or previous to that, in other formats such as DVD and Laserdisc too, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But in any event, yes, this is one might call a a kind of an anchor staple film in the Criterion Collection. It's had a long, rich physical media history with Criterion, which seems to be going on strong with the news in April. So if you haven't seen the film, this is your opportunity. This is your chance to watch this film, Ugetsu, or Ugetsu Monogatari. And if you have seen the film, then maybe it'll be an opportunity, my dear friends, you and I, to talk about what some of the differences might be, if any, perceptible anyway, from watching it, say, in the current state of things with the current releases of Ugetsu, and then also maybe what Criterion's upcoming 4K UHD plus Blu-rays has to offer. But in any event, very excited for this. If for anything, if to, again, have the opportunity not just to revisit the film, in this context of releases and Criterion and recent releases, etc., but also just to be able to talk about it and maybe to hear from people who might maybe be watching it again with a certain perspective that is different from mine, or or maybe watching it for the first time. In either event, I'm very, very pleased and excited indeed. I look at the website now, and it looks like I don't see anything that, to my eyes, jumps out at me as being anything "quote unquote" new in terms of supplements. But that's okay. We have, I think, a really wealth of great supplements already, including a documentary on Mizoguchi. It's sort of a feature-length documentary from another great Japanese filmmaker, one of my favorites, who's Kaneto Shindo. The English title of the documentary is called Kenji Mizoguchi: The Life of a Film Director from 1975. So Shindo is also a fantastic filmmaker, and this documentary is it's amazing. Really, really amazing. So you're getting, in a sense, two films for the price of one when you're getting, or at least considering getting, the UGETSU release from Criterion. So in any event, we'll talk about that in other points as well, because the Shindo film is really another key landmark work in the context of not just Mizoguchi, but also in the context of another great filmmaker, who's Shindo. Great Japanese. Who's some of his other works, by the way, Shindo's works are available in the Criterion collection, but that's a story for another day, I suppose. But in any event, for now, we have the great story or stories that await us when we watch this film. Maybe for some of us for the first time, and for others a rewatch. But whatever the case may be, this is a real majestic, beautiful, haunting work indeed. One of my favorites. So this is the work which is UGETSU. Okay, next up, scheduled for release April 8th, 2025. And this is also a title which actually also currently exists in the Criterion Collection physical media catalog at spine number 950. And this is the work which is described as being from the year 1959. And the name of the filmmaker is Billy Wilder. And the name of the work is Some Like It Hot. Okay, Some Like It Hot. It is coming to the Criterion, or it already is in the Criterion collection, but we have the, again, similar to the situation with UGETSU, we have a film which is described as being a 4K digital restoration. My hunch is that, again, we'll discover these details when we actually just explore the item when it arrives in April, but my hunch is it's probably going to be the same basis of presentation that we had in the previous Blu-ray release of Some Like It Hot some years back in the Criterion collection, fairly recently, because it's spine number 950. But we shall see. And it looks like to me that we're having we'll also see what happens in terms of how the sound affects it in terms of Dolby Vision, etc. We'll figure out those details when we explore it together, you and I, later in the year in April. Also, in terms of the supplements that we see listed, looks like I don't think there's anything that's going to be "quote unquote" new for the purposes of the new 2025 release or re-release of the film Some Like It Hot in the Criterion collection. But in any event, we'll figure out those details when we explore together, you and I, my dear friends. But before that, let me just say that yes, Some Like It Hot as a film. This is also one that I haven't spoken about on this channel, right? Again, another one of my terrible, terrible failings. Billy Wilder is also a filmmaker whose film discussions have been absent, I think, for the most part on this channel, which is again another failing on my part. But it's not because of any lack of, say, admiration for his works on my part. On the contrary, his films are quite dazzling, and they have a lovely charm to them on the one hand, and they are also very sprawling and quite various. And he's one of those filmmakers who can who's in, if you look at his body of work, essentially can do anything in any genre, which is quite remarkable on the one hand, and he can do it not just well, but fantastically well. And Some Like It Hot is it's a film that, how shall I put it? It's a film that, for me, it's already so great, but it gets so much better the more times I watch it and the older I get, because there are so many things that you don't quite get, you kind of get, but you don't quite get if you watch the film Some Like It Hot when you're, let's say, I don't know, like 7, 8 years old or something like that. And then it's a lot of fun, and it's like a romp film. There's a sense of a sort of chase film, and then also the hijinks between our leads, Jack Lemmon, Tony Curtis, and Marilyn Monroe, and others. So there's a sense of a thrill and chase and love story and mistaken identities and things of the sort. But a lot of things, when I saw it as a kid, went right over my head. So as I got older and I began to maybe understand some of the, say, let's say, double entendre or nuances of the work, and some of the sexual escapades that are also part of the milieu of the film, etc., etc. I mean, becomes very much it's a remarkable achievement, and so it's one of those films that, very much like other works of Billy Wilder, it really, it not just, I think it not only ages well, but I think for me that's just but part of the story. I think it not just ages well. I think it also functions. It's almost like it just grows exponentially upon its aging. It becomes that kind of film. So. It's a fantastic achievement. One of my favorite films directed by Billy Wilder. I probably put this one up there. Maybe another film I liked by him around the same time in the 1950s was a work which is called Witness for the Prosecution. But I think maybe this and that and Some Like It Hot and maybe some others, but really do it for me. And it's a film that maybe feels like it's teetering on something. It's teetering on the brink. It feels like it's like doing a high wire act on your tippy toes, and the only thing supporting your feet beneath are like a house of cards. And yet, not only is Billy Wilder and company able to achieve this, he's able to achieve, and everyone is able to achieve this so monumentally, to make it so much of an entertaining romp that is also very clever, very witty, and very quick and very snappy, and just endlessly entertaining. So it'll be a great pleasure for me to be able to speak about Some Like It Hot again in my own very maybe naive and very limited way. I'm not an expert when it comes to Billy Wilder or something like that, but I think this is great. So, and I mean, it's a fairly recent release in terms of the Blu-ray, so from a few years back. So it'll be interesting to see, again, comparison and contrast between, say, that earlier Blu-ray and this upcoming planned release for April, employing this time the 4K UHD physical disc technology. Although we'll see what happens in terms of any perceptible differences in terms of sight and sound. But in any event, what was I going to say? Oh, yes. In any event, I mean, if those potential, say, discussion points or issues aside, we'll still have the opportunity to revisit and re-celebrate the great legacy of Billy Wilder, captured I think, for all time, in great examples, one of which being the great film, which is this film, which is Some Like It Hot. Next, scheduled for release on, let's see here, on April 15th, 2025. And this is going to be on the 4K UHD plus Blu-ray combo edition release, or what I see as a corresponding Blu-ray disc. And this is a work which is described as being from the, it's described as being from the year 1994 at spine number 453. So, in fact, it had been in the Criterion Collection Physical Media Catalog at the time, spine number 453. It famously fell out of print, only to reemerge in the context of a box set a couple years back. But now we're seeing a reemergence of the individual release in the Criterion Collection Physical Media Catalog. That's very interesting for a lot of reasons, as well as the film itself. And before I forget, the filmmaker is Wong Kar-wai, and the name of the film is Chungking Express. Okay, so Chungking Express is coming to the Criterion Collection, or shall I say, it already exists in the Criterion Collection, or it had existed in the Criterion Collection. Sorry, I needed to pull it off of the shelf here. So it had existed in this early Blu-ray release from Criterion. This was one of the first Blu-ray releases from Criterion, in fact, spine number 453. At the time, it was described as being a new, restored, high-definition digital transfer. But then it fell out of print. But then, a number of years ago, we had this box set, The World of Wong Kar-wai, which is the Blu-ray set, which was purported to be based on new restorations and, new presentations of the films, including Chungking Express. And so this constituted the reemergence of Chungking Express in physical media form anyway, back into the Criterion Collection physical media fold, which on the one hand was like really great news on the one hand, but it also brought with it a number of very, shall we say, interesting conversation points about aspects of this new, say, restoration, or at the time of the Wong Kar-wai box set release, what was described as supervised and approved by director Wong Kar-wai, the 4K digital restorations of the works that were part of that box set. I mean, overall, it's a really stunning set, but one of the things that did come up, at least in terms of my conversation of the film Chungking Express in the box set, was how the 4K restoration as it appeared in this Blu-ray affected me and my reaction to it. And I would say that, even now, I would say that of all the films in the World of Wong Kar-wai box set, whose restorations perhaps irked me the most, I would say the one that irked me the most was the restoration for Chungking Express in that box set. For reasons which I've already discussed in some past videos on the YouTube channel. Discussed actually in quite detailed manner, actually. So you can find those videos, and maybe I'll bring them up again if they do arise when we explore this upcoming new release in April. So I'll leave it at that. Well, let me just say one other thing, which is, even now, as I watch I do visit the Wong Kar-wai films in the context of this box set fairly regularly, and so I did watch Chungking Express sometime maybe late last year, in fact, late 2024, because it's always fun to revisit the Wong Kar-wai films, and I do try my best with the new restorations, and I think for the most part I'm quite pleased with how I feel about the way that the box set handles the restorations. I know there's some issues that people have raised with regard to, for instance, the film Fallen Angels in the set. But actually, I think the Fallen Angels restoration in this new in the new restoration for the World of Wong Kar-wai actually is quite stunning. I'm quite enamored with how Fallen Angels looks here. So that to me, which is at the time I think quite a controversial point in many circles, was how Fallen Angels was quote unquote restored, end quote, for purposes of this box set release. But for me, Fallen Angels, the restoration I think worked quite well. and I did discuss that in some past videos on this channel. But the one that really irked me was the restoration for Chungking Express, which I don't think got a lot of. I don't know if it got a lot of maybe maybe it did and I just missed it, but I don't know if it got a lot of critical press at the time or maybe review attention at the time. But I do, even when I revisit the film on the restoration basis, I still quite, I still can't quite wrap my head around how the film looks and feels and sounds in the restoration. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's just there are some aspects that do feel somewhat distant to me, such that I prefer how the film looked and felt and sounded in previous iterations, in previous restoration or previous versions or previous presentations, shall we say. So, with all that being said, it'll be interesting to visit this individual release of Chungking Express, which I'm assuming will be the individual release broken out from the World of Wongo set. And I'm basing that on what it says: 4K digital restoration, supervised and approved by Director Wongo. And then also, yes, that's my understanding. I'm not sure, but that's what I'm assuming. So if my assumption is correct, then we will I'll try to approach it once again with as open a mind as possible. And maybe some people might disagree with me. Some people might think that the new restoration is superior to the previous restoration, which is fine. If you feel that way, I'm completely on board with your views and opinions. Not a problem at all. I'm not looking for a debate on this with anyone, but I can only tell you how I feel subjectively. So we shall talk about that again if it's interesting to you. If you're interested, we'll talk about that again when the new release of Chungking Express arrives back in April. But I will say this, which is I don't think that the new restoration of Chungking Express has it doesn't overall uh, um, overly negatively affect my viewing of the film. I still adore the film. I really, really adore the film. I think uh, it's one of the key films of the 90s in many ways. It's one of those key films of art house films of the 90s. It's one of those films, I think for many people, it was one of the first points of being introduced to who is this filmmaker, Wong Kar-wai, what's going on. I mean, for a lot of people, this was that gateway moment. And it was helped along by, I don't know, like Rolling Thunder and Quentin Tarantino and all this, and also had this great momentum in terms of being part of this art house film movement that was really aiming to have films that were from, say, from Wong Kar-wai and other films of his generation really reach a true international audience, and not just reach an international audience, but really reach it in a way that just solidified this film in the sort of annals of cinema history as being one of the great films. It's a remarkable achievement that seems to just span uh, generations and time and space and stories and music and tones and feels, and you're entering into like the space and the voids and the rifts that is, for all intents and purposes, a type of of universe that is the world of Wong Kar-wai. And so thus giving rise to the great title of the Criterion box set release. So you have and when you enter into the world of Chunky Express, it's like it's like a, a familial reality. It's like a shared reality. It's also an alternate universe reality. It feels very familiar, and yet it also feels very distant and very not distant, but very unusual, which is so great about the films of Wong Kar-wai. And perhaps Chungking Express is, in many ways, one of the greatest expressions of that for a lot of people, anyway. I think there is a lot to be said about this, and also, I don't want to suggest that and I'm now regretting maybe how I've ordered my my comments here on this new the news on the April release of Chungking Express, or the re-release, I should say. But I don't want to suggest that this is maybe my viewing of the film has been inferior. Maybe I should maybe attune my sensibilities about the film towards this now most recent restoration of the film Chungking Express, which again I am understanding is going to be the basis for this upcoming April release. But and if that's the case, I'm very happy to try to again reapproach this restoration with, as I say, as open mind as possible. And I'm very happy to be convinced. I'd be very happy to be convinced of the great advantages of watching the film through the restoration versus watching it through any previous um, previous presentations of the film. I'd be very happy to do that. So I will approach this with with an open mind and going forward, because as I say, presentation issues for me aside, I'm still enthralled by the rhythms and the mysteries and the key kind of almost the literary driving force, the soul and the spirits of the film. I'm driven by it so profoundly. I'll be looking forward to this quite immensely, very much. So again, I'm approaching this with an open mind. So I'm looking forward to this very, very much in that respect, as well as, of course, talking about it again. I mean, you can't. It's impossible to ever get enough of this. You always want to watch this again more and more and more, which is one of the great thrills and beauties of this Chungking Samlam, or as it's known in English, Chungking Express. Next, scheduled for release on April 22nd, 2025. Oh my goodness. And this is going to be a two-film set, or two-film single release, again, under the single spine number of 1257. But these are two films from, they're described as being from the year 1986. They have a kind of a connection or relationship, which not just, I mean, therefore it benefits from having them films be released together in this way. And they are, oh my goodness, this is great. They're from the filmmaker Claude BERRI. And the name of this release overall is Jean de Florette, Manon of the Spring, two films by Claude BERRI. Oh my goodness. Okay. So this is really quite stunning news. I'm not sure. I wasn't aware of any kind of news of restorations of these two films, but according to the Criterion website, this is new 4K digital restorations of the films, supervised by the director of photography. And then we have the films again being released on what is it? Is it a 4K plus Blu-ray 4 discs release, or alternatively a 2-disc Blu-ray release? And I'm assuming the 2 discs or the 4 discs, the maybe 4K discs and then 2K. I'm sorry, the 4K discs and the Blu-ray discs, excuse me, probably might be corresponding to 1 film per disc. And then, the Blu-ray format and the 4K format, respectively. That's my hunch, but we'll see about that as well. Just judging on what I understand the running times of the films. But oh my goodness, okay. So I don't know about you, but I discovered these films just not knowing anything about the filmmaker and not knowing anything about Pagnol. Marcel Pagnol, and still I don't have any claim to understanding or having any kind of expertise in either of these departments. But these were films that I think became fairly accessible. I mean, they were films that you could watch on VHS tape back in the 90s from VHS rentals. I think these were titles that, for instance, I first saw on VHS tape. I want to say like renting from my local Blockbuster video store on the eastern coast of the United States back in the 90s. And so, and they were quite stunning, and they were quite intense. And there were many aspects of the films that really went over my head at the time, but they were fairly, I think, constant. I mean, I didn't rent them every week, but they were rentals that I did make on a number of occasions, more than once, and they were it was and they were two separate titles, and they're two separate films, and so I was very fortunate to be able to discover them then. Um, and there is a kind of generational uh, aspect of this story, or a set of stories that has a certain type of, say, um, how should they put it? There is a kind of cause and effect type of trajectory to many of these stories, and so a lot of the details become quite enriching when, I think, watched over, say a fairly close expanse of time. Thus giving rise, I think, to the great benefit of having these two films being included in a single release, which is fantastic, by the way. And then just enjoying the richness of detail and the way in which this sort of rural side area is being depicted, while all these human drama events are unfolding before our very eyes. And so this is quite a set of films indeed. And so um, uh, uh, very exciting, very exciting films. Claude Berry, I think maybe. Um, uh, Again, I wasn't aware of any kind of rumor of these films being released in the 4K format in this way, but I'm always happy to be surprised, and here I am, quite surprised indeed, very happily so. So we have Manon of the Spring, which is the later film, and Jean de Florette, which is the earlier film, although they did get released around the same time, right, 1986. So uh, wonderful, absolutely wonderful. So this is going to be a wonderful treat to be able to revisit after a number of years. So I'll look forward to this very much. I'm looking at the supplements, or I'm looking at the special features, and it does say new 4K digital restorations, as I mentioned earlier. And then with surround DTS HD master audio soundtracks. That'll be interesting to see. Yeah, I do remember being affected also by the soundtracks of the films, respectively. And they do have interesting similarities and overlaps, but it'll be interesting to also be. I do also have, there are certain points that have some striking differences as well, which is also a great benefit of having the two of them, Manon of the Spring and Jean de Florette, or I should reverse them, Jean de Florette and Manon of the Spring together. So that'll be great, absolutely great. This is wonderful, absolutely wonderful news. I'm not at all familiar with the release history of these films, but apart from the VHS points that I mentioned back in the 90s, but all this is great. So this is going to be scheduled for release, what did I say, April 22nd, 2025. Jean de Florette and Manon of the Spring, two films by Claude Berri. Next, scheduled for release on April 29th, 2025. And this is a very recent film, described as being from the year 2024. And this is scheduled or designated for spy number 1259. And the filmmaker is Sean Baker. And the name of the film is ANORA. ANORA. So I have heard a lot about this. And at the time of the making of this video, this now mid-January 2025, this has gotten a lot of attention, a lot of press. Sean Baker, and among other things, I mean, I haven't seen the film yet, unfortunately, but I have heard about this film from a number of people. Also, in terms of its the attention that's been getting, the acclaim that it's been getting on the critical film festival circuit. Perhaps quite notably, as an example, Cannes Film Festival from last year. So I've heard a lot about this film. And of course, Sean Baker's name has a lot of weight, has a lot of import to it. And also, we should say too that it seems like January 2025, in many ways, will be the Sean Baker month. We'll have another film by Sean Baker as well to join in the ranks of the earlier Criterion release from about a year or so ago by Sean Baker, which is a great film, by the way, called Takeout. So which I've had the great pleasure and great honor of being able to speak a little bit about on this YouTube channel. But I have not seen ANORA yet, so this will be a great. I have heard a number of things about it, and so but I'll resist the temptation of reading any more until I watch the film. I'll try to watch the film if the opportunity arises. Maybe I'll try to watch it before the Criterion release. But if not, not sure if I'll be able to. But if I'm not able to, then I'll rely on the Criterion release when it arrives in April. So I don't have anything further to say in terms of the content of the film itself, except to say that this is well. In terms of the Criterion release, I should say that it has a 4K plus Blu-ray, 2-disc release, or the single-disc Blu-ray, or the double-disc DVD release. So that's great. I'm always glad to see the DVD format alive and well, even to a certain degree, with new Criterion releases. So this is a new Criterion release in terms of a new film emerging with a freshly new spine number, etc. So that's what I mean with that. So I'm looking forward to this very, very much. Sean Baker, I know a number of the works of Sean Baker, but there are a lot of Sean Baker's films that I have not seen. So this is one of them, and we'll talk about another film later on in the January release slate. Or sorry, the April release slate, excuse me, because these are going to be released in April 2025. That also I haven't seen, which we'll talk about in a moment. But very excited for this. I know there's a lot of it has a lot of critical acclaim attached to it, a lot of buzz. The story, as I know it, as I understand it, is quite a it's shaping up to be quite a compelling one. So I'm looking forward to this immensely. Sean Baker's film Anora. Next, scheduled for release also on April. I'm sorry, yes, April 29th. 2025, and this is a title which is designated at spine number 1260 from 1996. The name of the filmmaker is Julian Schnabel, and the name of the work is BASQUIAT. Wow, okay. BASQUIAT, and this is described as being a new 4K digital restoration of the 2024 black and white version, supervised and approved by director Julian Schnabel. Okay, so I don't know about this black and white version. This is very interesting to me. Black and white version. I have never seen this film. I mean, I know this film in terms of the, I know this film in terms of its initial release back in 1996, but it was in color as far as I remember it. Oh, it was a great film, eye-opening film experience. I had no idea who Jean-Michel Basquiat was. I had no idea who Julian Schnabel was. I wasn't in. I mean, in 1996, I was still what? I was still a teenager, and I had no idea. But this film was released. It was in the mid 90s, so it was part of this, what one might call, it was referred to as maybe the U.S. independent art house scene that was very fresh and invigorating back in the early to mid 90s. And Basquiat, or the release of Basquiat, was definitely part of that. But I remember also being introduced to the film and just seeing it being reviewed, I think, on Siskel and Ebert on TV. And you had the one of the scenes with Basquiat, who is portrayed by Jeffrey Wright. And at the time, I didn't know who Jeffrey Wright was. Now I know who Jeffrey Wright is. And so you watch a film like Basquiat, and you see Jeffrey Wright. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing to see, and also to see, it's a brilliant performance, by the way. And then also I remember the review clip that was used on that Siskel and Ebert episode, if my memory is not failing me, is the scene involving Basquiat also encountering Andy Warhol, as portrayed by David Bowie. It's also a really, really fascinating turn. It's a great Bowie performance, by the way, too. So I didn't watch it in the theater, but I was introduced to it by, again, these reviews these newspaper reviewers like Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert and others that were really giving it a glowing praise. And so I caught up with it later on VHS. Had a wonderful VHS cover with like a almost this wonderful street art. It was very Basquiat-esque, which I had come to learn a little bit later, and had a sort of the color scheme a bit like yellow and orange motif to it, which is really cool, with Basquiat in the form of Jeffrey Wright's performance front and center of that. And I rented that. It was quite remarkable. As I say, very invigorating and quite an achievement. And I enjoyed it quite tremendously. Again, not knowing about the art scene in this capacity, in this respect, I found it very, very engaging, very invigorating. But I'd never seen it. I never knew about the black and white aspect of it. Again, I'm not an expert when it comes to the film Basquiat. So this is completely new to me. This news about the black and white version of this. And it looks like, according to the Criterion website, it says, among other things, presented here in the, and I'm quoting here, I quote, presented here in the filmmaker's own luminous black and white remastering. And the remastering itself is, as I say, dated 2024. So this looks like this was a recent endeavor. I'm game. I'm totally game. I'm looking forward to seeing this film in this remastering version. Although I must say that it looks like, oh yes, it does say too, I should point out that it has the new 4K digital restoration of the 2024 black and white version, supervised and approved by the director. And that has 5.1 DTS HD master audio. And that version will also be made available on the 4K UHD disc, and then also on the Blu-ray. And I should point out that we have a 4K plus Blu-ray release and then a Blu-ray release. No DVD release, but we have one of those two options. Plus, I should say that it also says new 4K digital restoration of the 1996 theatrical version. So, oh my goodness, you're getting, oh, okay, this is really great. So it's like you can watch the different versions. Maybe it'll be something akin to, what were some other films that had similar releases like this, where you had a color version and then you had a black and white version? I think Godzilla -1 is an example, or Parasite, or Mad Max Fury Road, etc. Oh, that's really interesting. I never thought about that in terms of Basquiat, but now I'm thinking about it and I'm imagining what the possibilities are, at least in terms of my own experiences with the film. I'm totally game for this, and also you get the theatrical version from '96 as well, so you can compare and contrast. I mean, you get the best of both worlds. My goodness, this is great. Okay, I'm totally game for this. This is great. So this is scheduled for release April 29th, 2025, for spine number 1260, and number versions of this film, which is Basquiat. And last, but certainly not least, scheduled for release also on April 29th, 2025. And this is scheduled for spine number 1258 from the year 2008, also from the filmmaker Sean Baker. And this is the work which is called Prince of Broadway from 2008. And oh my goodness, I have not seen this film. I'm ashamed to admit I have not seen this film, and I know very little about this work. I know a number of, I'm aware of certain aspects of Sean Baker's great career, but there are other aspects that I'm still quite novice and very wet behind the ears. And so, Prince of Broadway, as being on one end of Sean Baker's spectrum on the one hand, and also most recently perhaps Anora, which is on the other end of the spectrum in terms of chronology. These are areas where I'm very very inexperienced. So it's great to have these opportunities here at the end of April 2025. So. Prince of Broadway. So this is going to be April 2025 is going to be in many ways the month of Sean Baker, which is very exciting indeed. And also joining the ranks, as I say, of not just Anora from I guess that same day, right? Because Anora is going to be released that same the 29th, but also Takeout. And as I say, I was very thrilled with how Takeout was treated under the Criterion banner. a year or so back. So this seems to be no exception to that. So I'm looking forward to a wonderful educating experience indeed with this. Again, Sean Baker month, it seems. This is described as having a new 4K digital restoration, so I have no frame of reference here. So I will be relying on my perceptions as a first time watch of this. It is also being made available on a Blu-ray, single disc Blu-ray, so we're not having any other format points here, but that's fine. I'm totally okay with that as well, considering what might call maybe what I'm assuming is, and maybe my assumptions are false, but what I'm assuming is a certain type of brilliant aesthetic and camera usage by Sean Baker during this period of his career. So I'm totally up for that as well. And also, not just one, but two audio commentaries too. That's great. So Sean Baker month, it seems, among with other filmmakers, of course, in the Criterion Collection planned releases for April. But here we have Sean Baker film number 2 or number 1, depending on one's viewpoint in terms of chronological order, from 2008, which is Sean Baker's film Prince of Broadway. It was, doth my eyes deceive me? I mean, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 films, 7 releases, I should say. A number of which are like multiple film releases. Is that what we're talking about here? That's amazing. That's really amazing. So we're like the number of releases that we're getting here is spectacular, and we're getting quite the range here, running the gamut. From, say, re-releases of titles, that's where UGETSU and some like at Hot Chungking Express come in. And then we've got some new emerging titles. The BERRI films, Jean de Florette, Manon of the Spring, ANORA, Prince of Broadway, and BASQUIAT. And then we're getting, as I say, either multiple versions of the film with BASQUIAT, or we're getting 2 films or more in a single release. So the double bill of Jean de Florette and Manon of the Spring in one, say, collector's release, however that's going to look in the final physical media packaging product. Or we get, for instance, the 2 films in the UGETSU release, which has always been there, the film itself plus the documentary by Shindo and the like. So it's great. I suppose maybe, and then of course I will be very happy to revisit and re-engage with the work, which is the great Chungking Express. I suppose if Criterion or could have maybe, or Wong Kar-wai, or whoever makes the final decision on these things, and I did mention this when I was talking about the World of Wong Kar-wai set, if they could have released multiple versions of the same film, pre-restoration and restoration version of Chungking, so that would have been like perfect. That would have been absolutely perfect. So then we would have a great opportunity to evaluate for ourselves which restoration or which presentation version works for us better. But anyway, I can't complain too much about that. But still, we're having the opportunity to re-examine Chungking Express. And also, it's great too because we had a number of titles in the Wong Kar-wai set that were broken off into individual releases. Not all of them. But we had what was it? For instance, In the Mood for Love, but now we have Chungking Express as well. So it would be great if we could have all those releases made individually. I'm a great supporter of that type of release strategy. I don't know how lucrative a strategy is in terms of profit margins and the like. I'm not part of the economic budgeting team when it comes to releases. I don't have that insight, knowledge, or foresight, or expertise. But from a consumer standpoint, I can say that it's always great to have the opportunity to have the box set release and also individual broken off releases, maybe if not 100% releases, maybe a good share of them. Criterion, I would say, does that fairly well, although we don't see that as I'd like to see it more often done. With many of its box set releases, for instance, I would say maybe the record of individual releases broken off from, say, the great Ingmar Bergman box set release. I think it's okay. Maybe it could be better. Same is true for maybe the Agnes Varda set. Maybe it's the same is true for Pasolini set. I'm not sure, but again, I can understand you don't want to have all the individual releases made from the box set release because you want to keep the cachet, you want to keep the allure of the box set, something which I also am a supporter of, something that makes the box set stand off from the individual releases, thus giving people the choice to want to get the box sets, and so keeping that alive. So I'm always a fan of that. So maybe not having every title individually broken off release, but having a good share of them. But finding that balance between individual releases from box set releases on the one hand, but also keeping some box set treats exclusively to the box set. So I can understand that. But that's maybe I'm expounding too much on my thoughts on that for purposes of today's video. So I apologize. I'm just going on and on and on. I apologize. But the point is that this will be great to re-examine. And as I say, have a fresh look and open mind in terms of Chungking Express. But oh well. And then going back to the April releases here, again, just a whole range of different feels and points and expressions. I mean, you have this great range. I'm really quite impressed. And then of the films, the ones that are going to be new watches for me are the Sean Baker films, which is great because it's not only this might be the year of Sean Baker. I mean, it's always been in many ways. Sean Baker's been one of the great filmmakers of the current generation. But again, more attention given the better, including my own attention. I certainly want the opportunity to watch as many of his films as possible. So Criterion's giving me that chance with two of his works. So I'm very excited. Plus, also again, revisiting films that I think will jog certain memories of watching them back in the 90s when I was much younger than what I am now. And I'm referring to the BERRI films, which is going to be a great treat to revisit. I'm thinking back now and wow, okay, so that's one area. And also BASQUIAT too, a film that I haven't thought about in quite a while, but this was also fresh and invigorating and exciting upon its initial release. Again, I know the BERRI films came a little bit earlier in terms of their initial release, but in terms of when I encountered them back in the 90s, but in terms of VHS releases for both films, in fact, or for those films and also BASQUIAT, I should say. And then the ability to revisit films that are just, they do it for me every single time, and then some, and those being Some Like It Hot and UGETSU, but films that I don't think I've spoken about on this channel. So I'm very happy indeed, very happy indeed. It's going to be a lot. There's a lot going on here. So 7 releases, but we're getting a lot of films. And if you think about getting these titles maybe in any upcoming sales or the like, which might, I hope, continue in later on in the year over the summer, or flash sales if they're available in terms of the timing, you're getting a lot bang for your buck. So in any event, that should also give rise to a lot of excitement, which I hope it does. And then, of course, perhaps most importantly and most prominently, and of primary concern, is the ability to be able to visit or revisit, whether for the first time or for a rewatch, and to celebrate the legacies of these great films and these filmmakers. So I, for one, am very excited to revisit a number of these films, and then for the Baker films to watch for the first time. So who could ask for anything more? Gosh. I feel quite spoiled. So thank you very much, Criterion, for this. So those are my initial thoughts. Oh, and I should say too, I mean, I don't know if we're getting any box set news or anything of the sort, but we shall see what happens. Also, I should point out too that with regard to some of those re-releases of the titles that already exist, like Some Like It Hot or UGETSU, I'll do my best to try to figure out if there's any discernible difference between watching the Blu-ray versus watching the 4K. It looks like I don't think there's going to be any difference in presentation materials. So if my hunch is correct, then we'll have to see if it's really quote-unquote worth it to get the 4K or is the Blu-ray, which I think for all intents and purposes for both titles I think are very reliable release. releases. Is it worth really spending the extra to get those 4K releases? Maybe it is, maybe it is. We'll have that discussion. Those discussions we've had where they have come up in terms of being relevant topics in a number of Criterion 4K releases. Not all of them, but a number of them. So we'll have a similar type of discussion there as well. I'll try to be as I'll try to give you my subjective viewpoint on that. It's not the best in terms of capturing all the nuances and details of 4K technology. I'm terrible when it comes to this, but I'll do my very best in terms of my own subjective response to it. But oh well. Okay. Sorry. There's a lot here, so I kind of went overboard with a lot of things, so I apologize. But that's my general impression and reaction to the April planned releases for Criterion. What do you think, my dear friends? Please let me know. Let us know in the comments section below. As always, I'm very, very curious and anxious and eager to hear what it is you have to say. You have many great reactions, much better than I could ever have. So don't listen to me. Listen to your fellow film enthusiasts in the comments section. That's where I think all the great comments come from. Not me, but from you, my dear friends. So please populate the comment section with your takes. Positive, negative, lukewarm, meh, or woohoo, yay, this is fantastic, or anything in between. Your views and opinions are very important. Very, very important. So please feel free to let me know. Let us know in the comment section below. All right, with that being said, my dear friends, let me end it here. And so thank you very much for your time and consideration and for stopping by. And until the next video, my dear friends, please continue to be happy and healthy and well. And please keep on watching a lot of great movies, including Criterion titles, including non-Criterion titles elsewhere, other labels, other brands, or other releases, movie theater experiences, drive-in experiences, streaming service experiences, and the like. The sky's the limit. The sky's the limit, and keep on enjoying your cinema journeys, my dear friends. And if I can continue to be so privileged and count myself lucky to be able to hear from you about your own cinema journeys, if you would do me the great honor of listening to you and hearing from you and hearing your advice and recommendations about your own cinema journeys and how it has not only helped in your own cinema journeys, but also maybe giving me advice on how I could further pursue my own cinema journey, I would count myself very, very fortunate indeed. I already do, because a lot of people have given me advice on how to approach cinema based on your own experiences. But if I could count myself so lucky as to maybe hope to continue to receive such advice from you, my dear friends, then I'll be one very happy camper indeed. So thank you so much for your continued support and advice and suggestions. And with that, my dear friends, please continue to be happy and healthy and well. Please keep on watching a lot of great movies. Until the next video, my dear friends, thank you and cheers.